Donato's is legendary for putting so much on their pizzas, but just listen to what they're taking off. Right now, buy any large pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for half off. Use promo code HALF. Donato's, gotta love more.
The Sports Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brady Batiste, give me the rock. Here it goes. I'm up and away. Slam jam bam, and now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Monday, March 16th, 2026. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 544 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to the day after Selection Sunday. Welcome to the official period where we are just analyzing the heck out of our brackets and trying to figure out how to make ourselves not hate them. Normally I wait a little bit longer to the start of the tournament before I really sit down and force myself to make some picks, but this year I've had to do a lot of projection stuff for the website and had to put out some predictions and things, and people, you all know by now, if you've been listening to this podcast or following any of the content I've produced, I'm terrible at forecasting what's going to happen in the NCAA tournament. I'm routinely defeated in my bracket pool by my children. I assume that will be the case again this year. I'm not even the best. I'm far from the best person in my family at predicting a bracket, much less winning a bracket challenge. But it's that time of year, and there's nothing better than filling on a bracket. I took a stab at mine already. I don't love it. We'll see. But we're here today. It's Monday night. And as promised on the last episode, was going to bring you some insight from some players today and some more insight and detail into Ohio State's first round NCAA tournament matchup this Thursday, 12:15 p.m. Eastern. First game in the round of 64 as the 8th seeded Buckeyes will play number 9 seed TCU in Greenville, South Carolina. And the tentative plan as of Saturday and Sunday was that we would have interviews with Jake Diebler on Sunday night after the selection show. And then on Monday morning, before the Buckeyes would have practice, we're going to talk to Jake again, and then like a player or two, presumably Bruce Thornton, and maybe somebody else. But then the way that Ohio State's basketball schedule just kind of unfolded, and when they had practice, and then Jake Diebler had his radio show, we did not talk to any players today. Now, there will be player interviews in Greenville, South Carolina on Wednesday. I will spend Tuesday traveling to Greenville. So having promised a podcast tonight, I'm still going to bring you a podcast tonight. We won't have, like I said, any insight from the players, but we do have a few more insights after the Buckeyes had, let's see, so we talked to Jake Diebler at about 6:45 p.m. on Sunday, and then we interviewed him at about 11 a.m. on Monday. So that's like 15 hours and 15 minutes or so of prep work. I will say Jake Diebler looked tired. You could see when we talked to him, like, that looked like his eyes were a little bit red, and that's a guy who spent all night preparing for this first round matchup. So we do have a little bit more insight, like I said, into the Horned Frogs, a couple of things that were worth discussing. So we'll break that stuff down in a minute, as well as the news of the day, which we'll get into the whole story of kind of how that all came about. But Thad Matta retiring from Butler and moving to a administrative role within the university, but Thad Matta stepping down from coaching, and it sounds like done this time. Like, not, I don't think there's another comeback here in the cards for Thad. So we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute as well. Before we get to all that stuff, I do want to remind you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review, please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to everyone who's taken the time to do all those things. Donato's is legendary for putting so many toppings on their pizzas, but just wait till you hear what they're taking off. For a very limited time, when you buy any large Donato's pizza, you can add a large one-topping pizza for 50% off. That's right, half off. You order using promo code HALF. Order your favorite large Donato's pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for half off today. Donato's, gotta love more. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Busy week. I hope you don't get tired of my voice, and I hope my voice holds out. Plan would be for there to be a Wednesday evening podcast. I'll try to keep it relatively short since the game is Thursday morning, but we will have interviews Wednesday morning. Open locker room. Wednesday is one of my, aside from the days when like there's actually a bajillion games being played, really enjoy Wednesday because there will be 8 teams all in Greenville that will all have open locker rooms for a half an hour period, and be coming out with some cool stories. So I'm looking forward to that, and stay tuned for all the stuff I might be able to gather from all the interview sessions that we'll have. Very much excited for that. I want to point you as well to, if you go to my Twitter account or my Blue Sky account, and I'll probably post like some sort of Instagram reel reminding you about this as well, but my Beat the Beat Writer Bracket Challenge is back. If you were part of it last year, you've already gotten an email invite reminder. I'll send another one out probably Wednesday evening, but yes, doing that again. It's free. Winner of the challenge can come join me on the podcast. You can, if you're local and you want to come meet me in the studio at the Dispatch, and I'll buy coffee or whatever, and we can hang out and talk about whatever you want, and record a podcast and have some fun with it. Had a great time last year with Dave, and excited to see how this plays out this year. So let's get into a few more thoughts here, some more insight into this TCU team, which, by the way, fun headline that I'm sure will be on our website tomorrow, but Snoop Dogg has picked Ohio State to beat TCU in his March Madness bracket. As far as having had a little bit more time to dive into TCU, we asked Jake, like, and Dealer, what do you make of this? What do you make of them? And he said he described them as a team that's, quote, physical and aggressive defensively. They do a good job turning teams over, and they're really aggressive on the glass. He said, we're used to that in this league, certainly. Their physicality and aggressiveness defensively is what really stood out initially. And it was pointed out, and as I discussed in the last episode, they're not blessed with great height. No player in TCU's primary rotation is taller than 6'8". They will start 6'6", 6'7", and 6'8" for their 3, 4, and 5 spots. And then their guards are about 6 foot. So not a ton of overwhelming size, certainly. So there's some physicality and some strength there. But asked about that, Diebler said, those guys play bigger. He said they've got good length and athleticism that maybe some of the guys we're used to seeing in the Big Ten. Their size is still impactful. It's just different than what we see sometimes. Things we've stressed are rebounding and taking care of the ball. We've seen some of their defensive schemes, what they're trying to do at times this year. We have some stuff to reference, which is valuable. So I saw one of the, and I've looked at so many bracket projection things and analyses in the last 24 hours. I cannot remember where I saw this, and I cannot remember the specifics, which makes for great audio here. But TCU is among the nation's most aggressive defensive teams as far as hard hedging on ball screens, committing to the ball. And the way that I read it, and the way it kind of resonated in my head, is that reminded me of what Iowa did in the first matchup between these teams that was so successful against Ohio State, and what allowed the Hawkeyes to really stress Ohio State in such a high degree in that backcourt. Certainly that was a game where Ohio State was not playing with Christoph Tilley, and also certainly Iowa boasts more just straight up size across the board than what TCU brings. But that was my thought when I read that. And I'm just thinking, like, okay, so as they've prepared for this, is that a fair comparison? So I asked Diebler about that, and he said, we've seen hard hedging this year. We've seen heavy help on the baseline this year. They do both of those things. We'll certainly reference what we've done against those schemes. They're not exactly like any team we've played defensively, but they have elements of things we've seen in our league. So I said, does it help, again, and maybe this is just me barking up the wrong tree, but I was like, does it help at all that you've seen Iowa play you a certain way and pressure you, and then you were able to make a significant adjustment to where you defeat them 2.5 weeks later in the Big Ten tournament? And he said, not just Iowa, but we've seen two to the ball a lot this year in ball screen, coverage, and rightfully so, because we've got good perimeter players. He said, we feel comfortable as far as our plan of attack going against that type of coverage. We've got to go out and execute it. In a game like this, you've got to have your counters ready, how to get to your next option or your third option if you need to. He said, this is more, he did point out, that was interesting. He said, this is more prep time than we're used to. Like, you think about like how quickly that back third of the season went, where it was a game every 3 days or every 4 days, like, you know, having almost a full week to rest, recover, work on some things internally, I'm sure. And then once you get the matchup announced on Sunday, you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all to certainly travel and just prepare. It's an interesting wrinkle. I hadn't really thought much about that they will have some extra time to try to prepare for some of this stuff. So the other thing that really jumps out to me about this matchup, and as I start thinking about how TCU is constructed, is this feels like a game where Ohio State will need a lot from Amari Bynum and Devin Royal. Both of those guys are essentially the same size as TCU's bigs. So that was one thing that I did. I asked Diebler specifically about Devin and like, how much do you need him to, you know, play well in a matchup like this? He said, in a game that we're anticipating to be really physical, Devin's a really physical player. He can be impactful on both sides of the ball. We need him aggressive offensively. He's best offensively when he's scoring from all the levels and not maybe just settling for perimeter or just interior. When he's utilizing his full skill set, it's a real asset for us. On the glass, the rebounding battle is going to be critical in this game. He's going to play an important part of that. It's a great opportunity for him to just be himself. Just go do what you do and do what you know is really impactful for winning for this team. I did think that Devin's game against Michigan, although I didn't love one of the shots that he took late, and I do feel like maybe as of late he's settled a little bit more for some of the fadeaway, high arcing perimeter shot or interior shots that don't strike me as having a super high degree of confidence that they're going to fall. I feel like he's settled for a few of those shots instead of maybe getting to the rim at the rate that he, you know, we've seen him do when he's been at his most effective. But he did have a double-double in that Michigan game. It was critical for the way that Ohio State was able to scratch and claw its way back in after falling behind early. As far as Bynum goes, Diebler was asked about him, and he said he's shown there's a maturity to his game that's translated. His size and physicality for a young player has been really impactful. We're seeing him be more aggressive. He did say the other night and then also today that in that Michigan game, he did have to pull him aside a couple of times and challenge him to be more aggressive. Like, don't be as passive as he was in that game. He said he's been consistently more aggressive, which has helped us be more dynamic offensively and helped us on the glass. He's playing a major role. I thought this was interesting. Just a little glimpse here, because we've talked a lot about Amari over the course of the season. But we haven't heard this. He said his ceiling, I think he's got pro potential. I think he's got the ability to be a huge impact player next year. I'm confident he's going to reach those heights at some point in the near future because of how he works. I just thought that was interesting. We haven't really talked like pro potential for Amari Bynum. In a really fun debate, this would have been a good thing to do like start of the season, I suppose. But what player on this Ohio State roster do we think is most likely to first play a minute in an NBA regular season game, in a game that counts, not a preseason game, not a whatever, but like an actual NBA game? Diebler did mention like he thinks that Bruce has a future there at the next level, and maybe that's the answer. Maybe Amari is the answer. It's an interesting question, and maybe also just kind of speaks to the collection of talent that they've assembled and where things can still maybe take another step as far as having legitimate, like no doubt about it, pros on the roster. And that's not saying that any of these guys aren't or can't, but I don't think it's a cut and dry answer at this point. Now, a story that I finished writing today that will be up by the time you hear this, but I had a conversation after the Michigan game with Puff Johnson. We talked for 4 or 5 minutes. We talked about, he joining the team and getting hurt or having the concussion, then coming back and playing, and then he's been injured again, and then he's been kind of on the outside of the rotation a little bit. He did see a little bit of playing time in that Michigan game, but also he's the only player on this roster who's available to play on Thursday who's ever played in an NCAA tournament game. And not only did he play in an NCAA tournament game, but he's part of that North Carolina team that made it all the way to the national championship back in 2022. So we talked about that. And we talked about, like, I asked him, what do teams have to make a run? That Carolina team, interestingly enough, was an 8 seed, took down number 1 seed Baylor in the second round, kept winning, did get St. Peter's to get to the Final Four. And then in a game that, in my mind, ended the Duke-Carolina rivalry forever. Only time Duke and North Carolina ever played in the NCAA tournament, in that Final Four, and Carolina won and ended Mike Krzyzewski's coaching career. That was a significant run for the Tar Heels. So it's interesting. Carolina was an 8 seed, beats Duke in a major upset. And now here's Puff Johnson on 8 seed Ohio State that has a shot to potentially play 1 seed Duke in the second round. So I asked him, like, what does a team need? This is before we knew the matchups, obviously, but like, what does a team need to be successful? Like, what do you think about how this team is entering the postseason? Does it have the type of stuff that you feel like as the one person on this roster who knows, like, does this team have the stuff that you need to win in March? He said, just like you saw tonight, like you've seen the last couple of weeks, we can play with anyone. He said, that's the thing, especially when it comes to the NCAA tournament. That's what makes a team dangerous. Once you're in the field, it doesn't matter rankings. It's roll the ball out and you've got to win 40 minutes. So we talked about what that experience was like and how did it feel to be part of a team that puts together a run like that goes as deep as it did into the tournament. What does that stuff mean to you? He said it was everything. He said, I still remember to this day. I still reach out to all my teammates that were on the team. We still keep in contact because his memories will last a lifetime. I can tell you the exact date that it was that we made it to the national championship. It's special. It's something that's going to stick with you forever. He said, that's what I hope the players know, because it's a lot. You pour your body and soul into this and you give it everything. And at the end, you want to see results. When I did ask him, like, okay, because you think about it, he occupies a unique place in college basketball history where he was part of the only Duke, North Carolina NCAA tournament meeting. And then he has also played in the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry in the postseason. Maybe different parts of the country would argue, but that's probably like the 2 biggest rivalries in college sports. I can entertain arguments for a couple, and I know it's not the same in every sport necessarily, but like Duke, Carolina, Ohio State, Michigan, it doesn't really get a whole lot bigger than that. So he talked about how cool that was, how much he has appreciated that. But also from a basketball standpoint, I think this makes sense, and it's the obvious answer. He said, Ohio State, Michigan, it's electric. I said, I'm not even asking you to, like, which one's better, but like, how do they compare? He said, Ohio State, Michigan, it's electric, but the UNC Duke one is on another level. He said, it's 2 basketball schools, and the competition has always been so close. He said, when we played in the Final Four, it's something that at least once a week, sometimes maybe 2, 3, or 4 times, I'll get reminded of it from USC fans about the run we had and retiring Coach K. That rivalry is on another level for basketball. But as far as like how this team is entering the postseason, he said, Coach Diebler alluded to it in early February. He said that teams at this time of year, they either go up or they go down. They're getting better or they're getting worse. At least since I've been here, I feel like we're playing one of our best brands of basketball. We've just got to keep it rolling. Now, as far as like the injuries go and things like that, like Ohio State even posted some photos today from practice to Instagram. I mean, he's active in the pictures. He did play in that Michigan game. He said, I did ask him about like, everything you've gone through and now you're dealing with some more injuries. Like that's gotta like, how are you handling that? He said, injuries are nothing new to my career, as people know. It's no secret. He said, every day you got to wake up, have the same attitude. That's winning first. And what can I do to help the team? How can I help us reach our common goal? He said, that's what I've had since I started college. That's one thing why I feel like a lot of the teams I've played on have been successful. Just because if we put winning first over everything, no matter what happens, I feel like you can do good for the program. So I'd encourage you, that's not everything that's in the Puff Johnson story, but that will be up by the time you hear this. So please go to dispatch.com and feel free to click on that. Maybe give that a read and perhaps a couple other things too. There's written a lot here the last 48 hours, and there's a ton more to come. So keep checking back, and I'll keep trying to point out when new things publish. So make sure you're checking the social media channels and doing all the things because I'll have all kinds of stuff coming your way here, especially once we get to South Carolina on Tuesday evening. So now the final thing, and this was expected and then not expected, but so we're in the practice gym at the Schottenstein Center. It's myself, about 5 or 6 other reporters, and we're talking to Jake Diebler, and like my phone is filming the press conference, and you can go watch the whole thing at dispatch.com. But my watch buzzes, and I look down, and I've got an email. I'm on Butler's men's basketball email list, and I have an email that says that Thad Matta is retiring. Now, just a few days ago, the university made it very clear that Thad was going to be back next year. There's been a lot of talk in the industry for the last year or so, like he was on kind of retirement watch, and this has been 4 years back at Butler. They hadn't made the tournament, hadn't really knocked it out of the park. Had some good moments. Clearly was struggling from an NIL standpoint. But there was kind of a sentiment all year that, like, is Thad going to retire? And then by the end of last week, it was made public and clear, like, we are committed to Thad being back for a 5th year, and we're going to support him with better resources. And, like, Dan Hurley was stumping for him when Butler played UConn late in the year. So everything was kind of lined up that Thad would be back next year for 2026-27. And then you get an email on Monday morning that he's retiring. And certainly that was a surprise. And that then was an odd spot to be in, because then, like, we're mid press conference, and I have to ask Jake Diebler about it. Like, we know the ties the Diebler family has to Thad Matta and how much he has meant to the Diebler family. I mean, certainly recruiting, signing, developing John in his playing career, and then hiring Jake as a video coordinator. I mean, Jake left an assistant coaching job at his alma mater to become the video coordinator at Ohio State. And he talked today about, like, that experience being on that staff of Jeff Bowles and Dave Dickerson and Greg Paulus, and those guys, like, all, working together, and, how impactful that was on a 20-something Jake Diebler making his way up the coaching ladder. So it was an odd deal where it's like we're in the middle of, like, previewing getting back to the NCAA tournament, and we're talking about this player and that player and the matchup and how much sleep you got. And I was like, so Jake, as an aside, just got an email that Thad Matta is retired. And he said, wow. I said, I know obviously he's meant a lot to your family. What do you think of that news? Like, how do you what's your reaction? And he gave a really heartfelt answer about how, like, college basketball, the first thing he said was, like, college basketball is worse for not having him, and how Thad's a guy who's always done it the right way. And we spoke a little more about just, like, how impactful he's been to the Diebler family, how much he has meant to them. Jake said, like, he's been trying to, like, get him to come back around more. He joked about, like, let's have, like, Thad Matta bobblehead night or something to that effect. I saw Matt McCoy, former PA announcer at the Schottenstein Center, and just all around awesome dude. He posted something on Twitter that, like, they should do an annual Ohio State Butler charity preseason exhibition and call it, like, the Thad Matta Classic or something like that. And I wouldn't hate that idea either. But it's strange because I feel like when Ohio State moved on from Thad, we sort of went over the legacy and went over, like, what he had meant to the program and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting today because it almost feels like the second stint at Butler almost didn't happen. I mean, he was there for 4 years, but, like, Butler never, like, really got over a hump and just kind of spinning its wheels a bit. And, like, there wasn't, like, any sort of major, like, I thought early on this season, then they had some critical injuries. But I did think maybe they were pointing in the right direction this year. Maybe Butler would have a chance to be a tournament team. The Big East as a whole hasn't been great. So it's, like, kind of an interesting little, like, postscript on the end of, his career, which at Ohio State, I maintain that run that he had for, like, the first 11 years or so, basically leading right up until when I got the job at the Dispatch. That stretch with Big Ten titles and Big Ten tournament titles, deep tournament runs, making the championship game, Sweet 16s, Final Fours, like, that sustained stretch of excellence, I put up there with the 1960 stretch for Ohio State of winning, obviously, the title, losing in the next two title games. Like, this is right up there with that. I don't think that is replicable. I don't think that will ever be equaled again. And it's just interesting to, like, I reflect on getting to cover the last 2 years of that. And I had covered the bulk of the Thad Matta era, the place where I was working before the Dispatch. But, like, as far as being like the beat guy at the paper of record, I got the last 2 years of Thad at the Dispatch, and those 2 years were not great. It was pretty early on that they lost to UT Arlington, Louisiana Tech, and were on the outside of the NCAA tournament picture essentially from that point on. But, like, I can so clearly remember, like, being in Miami, seeing Ohio State lose to Memphis. Josh Pastner is the coach, right around Thanksgiving. I can't remember if the game was on Thanksgiving or if the game was on Black Friday. But either way, like Ohio State having like a 2-on-0 and Jaquan Lyle dribbling the ball off his foot and it goes out of bounds. Like, Thad just talked about how, like, everything that could go wrong was going wrong at that point. And you just kind of felt like the negative momentum starting to pick up there. That was coming off of the Louisiana Tech and Texas Arlington losses. And, I remember the room that we did the press conference in felt like a classroom, and Thad got up and he left, and I was the only Ohio State reporter there. There were only like 3 or 4 people in the room, period. And remember him just saying, like, we'll get it figured out, like just kind of matter of fact, but also like I wasn't wondering, are you going to figure this out? It's like, I mean, it's Thad Matta, and he's had, the sustained run of excellence. Of course he's going to figure it out. But, like, that kind of stuck with me. Like, we'll get it figured out. I remember thinking, like, I wonder what compelled him to feel the need to say that. And it just kind of gave me a little glimpse into, like, well, maybe this isn't headed in the right direction, or maybe they're in. I mean, and then ultimately, like, the roster kind of blows up and everything unfolds the way that it does. But, like, Thad was always great to work with. Thad was, like, there was a game where, like, Jaquan Lyle basically quit at, like, halftime. Like, he, like, cut off his ankle tape and was just like, I'm done. And they basically made him go back out there, and he played, and I think Ohio State won. But, like, Thad was very critical of Lyle after the game and pointed in some of his post-game comments. And then my phone, like, our interviews are over and writing a couple things, and my phone rings, and then, like, my phone rings again, and it was like Thad was calling me from, like, a different number, and it was like he had just found out that Jaquan's, like, sister was in the hospital and, like, very nearly didn't make it. And I don't remember the specifics of the story at this moment, but he was, like, aghast at his own criticism of Jaquan in that moment, because he didn't realize until afterward that he was going through something significant, and that was certainly playing an impact. And he was like, please don't, like, I know I said what I said, but, like, don't, this will come out that, like, he's going through this, but, like, I can't take back what I said, but please, like, if you could, just don't write that. And it came from such a place of, like, caring for his dudes, that really left an impression on me. And so even as things were not going well, and I mean, it fell apart there at the end, that's just kind of who the Thad Matta that I knew and that I covered was like. He had a just fantastic sense of humor. Like, there was for a while there, like, he would just come in, he'd sit down at the podium before he start the press conference. Like, I'll never forget one time he came in, he sat down, and he just goes, you want to know who man's best friend really is? Lock your dog and your wife in the trunk of your car for an hour, come back, open the trunk, and see which one's happy to see you. It's just like, what? Like, where did that come from? Or one time he described his hometown of Hoopeston, Illinois, as, it's so flat you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. Always with the dogs with that. But and I've been to Hoopeston. He's not wrong. I had him on the podcast. And if memory serves, I'm not going to scroll back through every single one, but I believe he was my guest for episode 100. And I'm 99% sure of that, but I just remember I'm still kicking myself because, like, someone says something funny and you don't have the right response, and then you think of it later, and then it just haunts your brain for the next 100 years. So, like, Thad wasn't doing a lot of interviews at this point. He had been fired from Ohio State, and had kind of, receded into private life a bit, and was out of the public eye. And it was like, well, I'm doing episode 100. Maybe I can have him come on. And so I reached out and he was happy to, and we did it. And so I like had this whole intro, and then I said, hey, Thad, thanks for, coming on the BuckeyeXtra podcast. And he said, yeah, thanks for having me, Adam. I just have one question for you. What the heck is a podcast? And like in that moment, it so threw me that I like answered him like honestly, like, oh, it's kind of like a radio show, but we were, and like to this day, I kick myself for that. Like, why didn't I have something better? Like, oh man, I was hoping you knew, or something like that. Like, it just, like I said, it's a dumb thing. That's one of those just like random little memories. It just lives rent free in the back of my brain. And I just wish I would have had a better, funny response to Thad's question to me on episode 100. So Thad Matta retiring. Fascinated to see where Butler goes with that and who they hire and what that job looks like moving forward. But I said I was going to keep this one short, and we were here already past half an hour. So this seems like a good place to wrap it up. Like I said, Tuesday, travel day. I'll probably still have some more stuff to write once I get to Greenville. And then Wednesday will be all of the content. So stay tuned for all that. But really, really excited to get down there and go cover the NCAA tournament once again. First time in 4 years. Selfishly, thrilled to be there. Cannot wait. So as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardyddispatch.com. Thank you again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty for getting this out to you. I'll be back with you sometime Wednesday evening, Wednesday afternoon. Stay tuned on that. But until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon. Want a huge deal on a large pizza? For a very limited time at Donato's, buy any large pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for 50% off. Yes, half off. Use promo code HALF. Donato's. Gotta love more.
Be sure and subscribe to the BuckeyeXtra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.